Good evening. One more time. Good evening. I have you people trained. I love that. Welcome to the Grammy Museum. We're pleased you're here. We're actually inaugurating something very special tonight, so you guys are witnesses to history. Before we do that, if you have one of these, please silence whatever you've got queued up as a ringtone these days. Also, no flash photography, video of any kind. I've said this a million times. We have an archive here at the Grammy Museum. Everything we do here gets filmed and goes into our archive on the third floor. So you can come at any point and check out what great artists had to say and do here at the Grammy Museum. One of the things we always encourage is to become a member. If you're not a member, there are actually benefits to membership, as someone once said, and you can find out about becoming a member of the museum out at the retail store. In fact, later our guest tonight will be signing CDs out in the retail store. So while you're doing that, check out becoming a member. It is a very busy week here at the Grammy Museum. For those who, yeah, exactly, you're nodding your head. Yeah, I'm the one who has to do these programs. Hello. I know. It's a terrible sacrifice. When did I lose control of this? Wow. Tomorrow night on this very stage, super duper Alice Cooper. We are screening. Yeah, we're screening a documentary, an incredible documentary that I had the chance to see this weekend about the one and only Alice Cooper, and he will be here to talk about the film after we screen it. On the 23rd, we have an author, Holly George Warren. I better learn how to pronounce that name. Holly George Warren will be here talking about a book she's just written about Alex Chilton called A Man Called Destruction. So come and check that out, and Holly will be signing books that night. Also on the 24th, Dave Alvin and Phil Alvin will be here. Yeah. That's one program I'm not doing. So, and also continuing with the series that we are starting tonight on Monday the 28th, Hooray for the Riff Raff, an incredible band from New Orleans. Please come and check that out. And on the 29th, the one and only Drive-By Truckers will be here. Also, a round of applause for our sponsor, American Express. Yes, indeed. When we went looking for sponsors to help us bring great artists to the museum, they stepped up and said, yes, we'll help you do that. So we are deeply grateful to them. But let me tell you a little bit about this, what we're doing tonight. Tonight, we inaugurate a series on the broad and diverse genre known as Americana music. We do so in partnership with the Americana Music Association, whose mission is to advocate for our authentic roots music around the world. Yeah. And our guest tonight embodies all that makes Americana music so special. She's a songwriter whose personal story, abandonment, adoption, leaving home at age 15, challenges with addiction and the law, have all found their way into her music. She didn't write her first song until age 35, and yet has since been recognized by fellow artists and audiences as a writer of uncommon depth and compelling beauty. She's released 9 albums since her debut in 1997, and in 2005, the Americana Music Association recognized her as Best New Artist. Her new album, Trouble in Love, will be released in June. We are thrilled she's here tonight to kick off this series. Please welcome Mary Gauthier. Welcome to the Grammy Museum.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So you've said that the new record is one of transformation for you.
I think so. I hope so.
How so?
Can you start with an easy question?
Take your time.
Yeah, the songs are stacked. I wrote 35 songs for this new record.
35.
Yeah, I wrote 35 songs over about a year and a half period, and there's 8 songs on the record.
Right.
So I needed to tell a very particular story in a very particular way, and I didn't know which way to go with it, so I just started writing. And some are better than others, but the ones that made it are there for a reason. I was trying to make a record that fell in like a book, like a piece of literature. And so in the beginning, the character is stunned and shocked. It's a breakup record. The character is blown away by this explosion that wasn't anticipated. Yeah. And in the end, there's a sense of spiritual growth and development and an acceptance of the inevitability of what happened, and almost an ability to take responsibility for some, if not most, of what happened.
Well, you can certainly hear change going on, not only within the songs, but as you progress through the record. There is change happening. So clearly your intent is received by the listener.
Yeah, it's perspective shift on a deep level, which I think you have to transform spiritually to see things differently. I had dinner with some friends after the show at McCabe's the other night, and we had a talk, and the fellow said, I hit my bottom when my wife got pregnant with another man, another man's son, another man's child, and he said, about a year after that, I was able to tell her that I was sorry. I'm like, what? He said, that happened because I wasn't strong enough to leave her. And I left her no choice but to have to do something to end this thing that shouldn't have been continuing.
Wow. That's a lot to take on.
That's what I said. I said, you think this is transformation? You should hear that dude's record.
Yeah. But you said, but you said something interesting in an interview. I'm not sure that you were referring specifically to this record, but I think it applies. That grief is an altered state.
I think so.
That it's not who we are. I hesitate to use the word normally, but in our best selves.
Yeah, that amount of intensity is not sustainable. It flames and it flames and it burns, and then the fire gets smaller. So, and that's why I had to write so many songs, because I did start this record in a state of grief, and so I needed to write through it to get to the truth. When you're feeling that way, you think that the world is that, and it's not. It's an altered state.
Yeah. When I was listening to some of the songs, particularly the song "Oh Soul," struck me as granted, you could say this about a lot of songwriting, but there's a spiritual quality there. It almost sounded like a spiritual. Yeah,
that was intentional. Is this a song I wrote about?
I'm getting better at this, aren't I? Yeah.
It is a song I wrote about. It's kind of rooted in the Robert Johnson Crossroads mystique. Did Robert Johnson really sell his soul, or is that a fable? Is it literal, or is it a mythology that developed over time and then was perpetuated by the record company to sell shit? What is it? And ultimately, I wanted to explore the idea: can you sell your soul? And at the end of the exploration, I came up with a resounding "yep," and I've done it, and it sucks.
But there is so much of your writing is incredibly poetic, and there's a line in that song: "The body's but a prison when the soul's a refugee." Hello.
Have you been there, or is it unique to me?
Well,
it's a painful place when you've surrendered a part of your integrity that is intrinsic to who you are. in exchange for something that you thought you needed
Right.
more than that particular value.
Yeah.
And you end up empty. You end up empty from it. And certainly in our business, we see it over and over again, particularly in the arts with actors and musicians and songwriters and people who are asked to give pieces of themselves that are really important not to give.
Or to protect.
Or to protect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that I was just looking for that. I was looking for that way of expressing this, and so, "Oh soul, I sold you away" seemed like a direct line. That's like, what would Hank have said? He'd have just said it.
Right.
Yes.
And you took a very interesting approach to recording the record, in that number one, you selected very specific musicians, and then you proceeded not to tell them very much about the songs.
Right. Right.
Talk a little bit about this process, because it's fascinating.
Right. Well, because I was so vulnerable when I wrote the record and I wrote the songs, I wanted the musician. I didn't want it to be a record that was a performance of being vulnerable. I wanted them to be vulnerable. I didn't want it to be one step removed. I didn't want actors. I wanted the real deal. So the best way to have them be vulnerable was not let them rehearse.
That'll make some musicians very vulnerable.
And so they couldn't pull out their bag of tricks that they always use. They were on the edge of their seats. And the other way to make them vulnerable was take away their headphones.
So you're all playing in a room together.
We're all playing in a room together without
Yeah.
headphones.
Yeah.
And we're not using Pro Tools either, so no punches. But we had to get it in one take, like in the old days.
Uh-huh.
And we had to play softly because there's drums, and the drums take up a lot of sonic room. So we had to play softly to capture the nuances of each other's playing. And without the headphones, you can't do more me. You come together as a band that way, or you don't. And so I did that intentionally, and these players were of the caliber that they rose to it really quickly. They were able to do it.
I mean, there is sonically, there's an immediacy to it that jumps out, I think, when you hear it. But also, it's almost, and this may not be the right word, it's almost fragile.
Yeah.
Because it's so new for everyone who is playing it.
Right, a little tentative. That's how you feel when you're full of grief.
Yeah.
More than a little tentative. Damn tentative. And so, we try to capture that, and I think that stripping it down was a really good idea for me too. Because I had to get it in one take. I wasn't going to be able to go back in and fix it by punching things in and fixing it artificially. It had to be one performance as a group. And so in that, there'll be human error. There's no perfect performance. But I always wanted it to be real anyway.
Yeah.
That's distinguishing for me, being in Nashville where everything is polished and perfect and ready to go to Walmart. This is my first record that I've ever made in Nashville. I've always been afraid of that sound. I don't like that sheen, that super compressed artificial intelligence, that there's no human beings. This has been done by superhumans and machines. I never liked that.
And you're also not a writer in the sort of typical Nashville mold.
I would have been in 1972, but today, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So does songwriting for you, I mean, we talked about kind of the emotion of what drove the songwriting, but for you, do songs begin with a lyric, an idea, a title? Is it the words for you first?
Yeah, I think so. When I'm asked this question, I always give the same answer, and it's the song begins with inspiration. It starts with, oh, that would be a good song, or a feeling that I'm trying to capture in a song, or even if I'm at a restaurant, I'm sitting at a table having dinner with you, and somebody, sitting at other tables talking, and I overhear something that just went bing, because songwriters are always listening to other people's conversations, and our antenna's always up looking, for that.
We did have dinner tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's fair game.
Yeah. I hope I didn't say anything that would be used later.
Well, you'll find out.
We were talking before, particularly about the first track on the record,
Yeah.
and the heaviness of it.
Right.
It's
bass and drums.
Yeah. Talk about what you wanted to get there.
Well, I wanted to get to the broken heart. I wanted it just to be boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told the drummer, just do John Bonham when the levee breaks. Right?
How perfect is that, by the way? I mean, it's just
like boom, 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 dum, dum, dum,
yeah.
dum, dum, dum. And then he just started doing it, and it's like, there it is. And then the band kicked in, and we went for it.
Yeah, and it sounds great. I read a great quote of yours about songwriting. You said, if I don't go deep enough, it's a problem.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, I think my job that every artist gets to write their own job description. So I'm not saying this is every songwriter's job, but for me, my job in the job description that I've written for myself is that I want to go past me and get to we. Because inside of all of us is the universal human experience. And so I've got to puncture the I and get to the we. So when people say, gosh, that's heavy, and I said, yeah, man, being human's heavy. It's not interesting to me, just my own personal story and the specifics of my adventures as a human. Mm-hmm. I want to go just one step past that and get into human nature and connect there at that very fundamental level that transcends all the things that we think separate us: age, race, sexual preference, nationality. Mm-hmm. All of that is not as deep as what I'm trying to aim for, which is the thing that Woody Guthrie did so well. He did best, which is the human experience expressed in his songs. Yeah. In fact, when Bush was president and I toured Europe, I opened the shows for 8 years with the Woody Guthrie song, just to let him know. Yeah. Where say,
you were coming from.
Well, I'd get there and they'd say, "What's up with your cowboy?" Like, where do you begin?
Yeah.
It's not my cowboy.
No.
This land is your land. This land is my land. California. And they know the words. I mean, They know the words in Prague. Yeah. They know the words in Dresden.
Talk about what that means to you as an artist going over there, and you're playing that music, and those folks know the words.
It means we're one human family. And we connect in a fundamental way that transcends politics. I think a lot of times politicians pull us apart, and artists' job is to pull us back together. And I always bristle when people say musicians should stay out of politics. A lot of people have attacked Bruce for that. Yeah. I went to see Bruce the other night in Nashville. He was amazing. And I put a bunch of my photos up on Facebook, and I got a couple of, he should stay out of politics. And my answer is, if anybody should be talking politics, it's musicians, because we are all over the world. Mm-hmm. And in some years, I could go to 8, 10, 12 countries in 1 year. Yeah. I talk to people everywhere. How many people are that well-traveled? Musicians know people everywhere, and we have a broader view than just a particular view. Yeah. We see human nature, and we see what connects us.
As long as we're talking about, kind of going overseas and audiences outside the United States, there seems to be and I'm going to make somewhat of a generalization here, but I think it stands up over time. There seems to be a very willing acceptance for artists of a broader, more kind of diverse musical base overseas than is readily accepted here. In other words, artists from the Americana genre who may have, audiences of modest size here can go overseas and find enthusiastic, willing and ready audiences.
That would be me. Yeah, I do way better over there. Didn't that happen with Muddy Waters?
It did.
Didn't that
I
happen
mean,
with
it
the-
goes back. It goes back to the '60s and the blues artists that George Wine took over, on tours to Europe. They did far better there than they did in the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
For you as an artist, is there some cognitive dissonance to that?
I try not to think about it. I think in terms of I'm just glad anybody comes.
Well, there is that.
I try not to think about. I'm thrilled that when I play in Amsterdam, it's a big room and it's full. When I
Yeah.
play in London,
Yeah.
last time I played in London, it was almost 600 people. For me, that's a big show. I don't play to big houses like that. I've never had radio support here. To get to that, you have to have AAA radio support, heavy
sure.
rotation.
Sure.
It's not going to happen. My subject matter's not conducive to that.
Right.
And so it's more driven over there by tastemakers and music magazines, and there's still a lot of music journalism there that hasn't all been swept away. Like here, so many of our great music journalists. Oh, thank you, Randy Lewis.
Except for Randy Lewis.
Thank you, Randy Lewis,
God
by the
bless
way,
him.
and the LA Times for
Yep.
keeping him there.
Yep.
But
Yep.
those are few and far between.
Yeah.
There's not a lot besides LA Times, New York Times. With real music journalists that are musicologists.
Yeah.
But in Europe they still have it. Yeah. So I think that drives it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Your songs, there's a real, and we'll talk a lot about songwriting, but there's very much a literary quality to your work. And are there writers, not songwriters, but writers that you've admired over the years that maybe have in some way influenced your songwriting?
Oh, there's too many to mention. But I will say Flannery O'Connor was a really important writer for me. And a lot of the writers that I read in college, like Kurt Vonnegut, love Vonnegut, John Irving, everything he puts out. I'm at the bookstore, waiting for that new book.
Yeah.
I read a lot. I used to, when I was a little kid on Saturdays, my mom would bring me to the library in Baton Rouge when it opened, and I'd stay there till it closed. I would spend the whole day at the library.
Yeah.
When I was even a younger kid, I remember the bookmobile. It would come
I
around.
remember bookmobiles.
Yeah, it was great, but they'd only let you get 6 books. And for kids who were voracious readers, that would last me about 2 days. And then I'd have to wait, 4 days for the bookmobile to come back, And I think I read every kid book in the bookmobile.
What is it about a writer like Vonnegut? What is it about him that resonates with you?
Truth teller. Truth teller.
Mm-hmm. Is that the end goal? Tell the truth.
For me, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I resonate with people who are willing to just put it out there and say it the way they see it. And he was a brilliant man. And I read his. There was a biography out about him a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And he got started kind of writing pulp and just any way to make a living. I mean, it took him years to become Kurt Vonnegut, to be able to write the thing that he was, things that he were put here to write, like Slaughterhouse-Five and the Vonnegut that we know and love developed over time. Did you know he was a writing teacher and John Irving was his student?
That I never knew.
Yeah, get the
Wow.
Vonnegut. If you're a fan, get that biography. It's very well done. Yeah,
You didn't start writing songs until 35.
that's right.
What is it that ultimately prompted you?
Well, I had to deal with drug and alcohol problems. I had to get sober first, and I didn't get sober till I was 29. And so it took about 3 or 4 years into recovery. I had lost my ability to read. I wasn't able to focus long enough to get a paragraph in my memory bank and decipher what I had just read. I'd have to go back and start again. I'd done some damage. And so it took 3 or 4 years to get my reading skills back. Oddly enough, I was able to open and run restaurants.
Not quite sure what that says, but
It's manual labor.
Yeah.
I could do manual labor at a pretty intense level and work hard, but I couldn't work smart. You know, the writing, you have to be quiet and still and come from a place of being able to listen to voices in your head, and I just didn't have that. So I got a late start because I got sober late. So yeah, around 34, 35 is when I first started writing songs.
but that was quite. I mean, really, quite a risk at that point.
Yeah, it was in a way. In another way, looking back on it, it just seems inevitable. Inevitable.
How so?
Well, getting sober was not inevitable. It was either get sober or die. Those one or the other was inevitable. But once I got sober, it became somewhat inevitable that I wanted to write because my love of reading is so big, and my love of songs is just so tremendous. And I always had a guitar. I just wasn't sober. You know, I would try to line up the right, in a scientific way, the right chemical compounds to write with. You know, you know, it's like, oh, too much cocaine. You know, should have. You know, next time we'll try a little more.
Let me write
more
that down.
Valium, a little less cocaine. It's like, yeah, tequila's not working. Let's try bourbon and Valium and cocaine. And it's like, no. Maybe Percodan. Percodan, Valium, I wasted 10 years, you know. I never wrote anything, you know. I would just end up with my head on the page, you know, just like, well, we'll try again tomorrow. And then I woke up one day unable to read, you know, and so it was just long drawn out. I kind of wish that it wouldn't have been that way, and yet also I'm glad that I came to it older and with a sense of a dedication towards truth that I might not have had in my 20s.
You did a record a few years ago called "The Foundling," which is, you know, very much your own story. Why was it important for you to write those songs and to make that record?
It was really important for me personally. It was probably one of the more important things I've done in my life because I had to try to make sense of being adopted. And for me as an artist, I make sense of things I don't understand by writing about it. That's how I untangle twisted knots, emotional knots, knots of trauma, knots of vibrating material inside of me that I don't understand. I try to pull it apart carefully and slowly by writing about it. And so for me, I needed to understand and try to make sense of the impact adoption had on my emotional development and on my life, and how it affected me, and release that, you know, it's sort of a catch and release system.
Yeah. But you released it, but then you got a lot back. There was a response from, for lack of a better term, the adoption community. Talk about that and how that affected you.
Well, the outpouring of yeah, me too's was a big deal, because part of the deal with being traumatized is you think you're the only one. And part of the healing and the journey away from trauma is to know that other people have survived it, and that other people are dealing with it too, and the support and the reaching out of hands to pull you in times that you can't pull yourself is part of of rejoining the human race, I think. And so all over the world, I got, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. I mean, Australia, New Zealand, all over Canada. I played the Foundling Museum in London, which was like getting hit in the face with a baseball bat. I wouldn't recommend it, but wow, I can see how American adoption got so screwed up. Thank you, Puritan England. Wow, that was enlightening and a really strange experience going to that place.
And I imagine this was unexpected, you know, kind of the outpouring.
They asked me to do a benefit for the Foundling Museum in London. I thought, okay, sure, happy to do it. I had no idea I'd walk in there and get a whole lot of information I wasn't aware of about adoption. And about, prior to the foundling hospitals, women who had babies out of wedlock oftentimes killed them or just left them on the street. So this was founded as a way of saving babies' lives.
Yeah.
But for a couple of 100 years, there were only two destinies for foundlings. The men were put in the military and the women were put in the laundry. Like, Jesus, no wonder this has been a little traumatic. And the history of it was not known to me, not in that way. There's these paintings and the story is told in ways that illuminated it for me and showed me from where I come, you know, and the shame that was put on these women in the 50s and 60s here who had relinquished their children under social pressure because they were told they weren't worthy as a single woman to keep those children. A lot of that can be traced back to Puritan England. Who knew? I mean, definitely.
You talked as, you know, the record was a response to this particular trauma for you, and yet we were talking earlier where you are now working with others who experience a unique kind of trauma, Iraq war veterans.
That's right.
And helping them deal with that through songwriting. Would you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. Well, my experience has been this, that when you go from story to storyteller, there's an empowerment there. You know, what we're saying, the winners write the history books. And so it's a big step from being a victim and feeling a victim to sitting down to write the story. It's just a very big step towards liberation from your trauma. And so we're working with the 2 weeks from now, we'll be in Austin working with female veterans who have experienced traumatic injuries or have seen people who have had limbs blown off and have that trauma. We'll be working with them to release that through song. And so basically I'm just going to sit with them and ask them to tell me a story. I'm going to try to put it into song and then play it for them and give them a recording of it. Yeah. And it'll take it into another realm for them. And like it does for so many artists. When we write our stories, we're empowered. It's a powerful thing to become the storyteller. It really is.
It seems like somewhat of a risky endeavor for you, in a way.
And that it might reactivate something?
Could be.
I don't worry about that because I feel like I've done so much work around this stuff. You know, in addition to songwriting, I've been in therapy so long I could have. I mean, it's probably 2 or 3 IRAs worth of cash money. You know, I have dealt with it for so long. I'm pretty comfortable dealing with other people's now. Yeah. I feel as though I'm able to pass it on. I feel as though I'm moving. This is cool. I'm moving towards teacher now. Yeah, the student is.
That's a big step.
Yeah, I put in my 10,000 hours here, and the student's ready to teach.
Yeah.
And I look forward to it because I know that feeling of liberation when a person hears their story in song and other people go, yeah, me too. There's something that unlocks. There's a hell you get to walk out of.
And
rejoin the human race.
Yeah. And you do, but besides working with the veterans, you do songwriting workshops. You know,
I do. I teach songwriting a lot. I've got a workshop this weekend in Nashville. I'll be teaching 20 students myself at Scarrett Bennett campus in Nashville.
Yeah.
And then I've got another one in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I think, in British Columbia that you have to kayak to get to.
Wow.
It wasn't my idea.
Yeah.
But
I won't be coming to that one, just FYI.
and I might fall out of the kayak and not make it myself. But I do. I teach songwriting a lot, and I really enjoy it. It's my favorite subject. I love talking about songwriting.
Sure.
It's my passion.
Sure.
And I think I wouldn't have been able to stay sober without it. It gives me a reason to wake up in the morning, and it's never done.
Yeah.
There's always a blank page when the song is done. I got a blank page again. So, you know, it's something that keeps me. I'm just very passionate about it.
Well, and to that end, recently you were asked by CD Baby to write a letter to a young songwriter, much in the way as has been explained, the Rilke letter to a young poet. I found it particularly moving, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to read it.
Oh, wow. Sure, Scott. Thank you. Yeah, in case the audience is not familiar, Rilke was an Austrian poet who is second only to Khalil Gibran for number of books sold. And Rilke corresponded with a young poet by letter and sort of mentored him. And the Rilke Letters to a Young Poet is one of his best-selling books. And a lot of artists read that book because his advice is still relevant, even though that was a century ago. The deal is still the deal. And so CD Baby came up with this great idea of having established older songwriters write letters to younger songwriters just starting out. And I was given the great honor of being the inaugural letter writer. And so this is what I came up with. I started it with a Rilke quote, and Rilke says, "Nearly everything that matters is a challenge, and everything matters." It's kind of reassuring, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Scott Peck book, The Road Less Traveled, the best first sentence of any book. He says, "Life is difficult. Once you accept life is difficult, it's not as difficult." But if you don't accept it, you're just going to keep going. It's going to get easy after this. It's going to get easy after this. It's going to get easy after this. No, it's not. So, okay, so you've watched your musical heroes take the stage to thunderous applause, adulation, and love, and you burn for that, for yourself, and you want to be a professional writer of songs. The songwriting call has whispered in your ears for years now, and you've decided to finally answer it. You are ready to embrace it, to begin your journey as a songwriter. I'd like to congratulate you, and I would offer you a few considerations if you are open to hearing from someone who has trudged this path for 2 decades now. And then I put in bold, warning, a songwriter's life is not what you think it is. Music is more than a bouquet of sweet vibrations. It is something from a higher world, which we humans have been given the power to invoke. Artists are alchemists with our hands in the holy, the sacred. Yes, there is great power in creating music, but also great danger. The journey of the artist is filled with pitfalls. Where there is great beauty and the power to move millions, there is always great risk. Songwriting is a noble calling that requires more than talent and perseverance. It will require courage. If you are willing to face yourself and honestly reveal in your songs what you've seen in that unveiling of yourself, then you have a chance of writing songs that can outlive you. What can we gain by walking on the moon and planets if we are not able to cross the abyss that separates us from ourselves? This is the most important of all voyages, and it is the job of the artist. The object of art is not to make saleable products, it is to save one's self and to be part of saving us all. Either we tell our story or our story tells us. And know this, a half-truth is a whole lie. Character, like integrity, is much easier kept than recovered. So write from your true self, not the self you think you should be. Do not try to impress us, and do not hide behind thin walls and smoke screens. It will only bore us. Brutal self-honesty is your challenge and will reward you with much more than you can yet imagine. You must learn how to reject acceptance and accept rejection. People's opinions of you and your work are irrelevant. The search for love and applause has no place in the creative process. Here is what I know. Thriving artists suffer from a feeling of inferiority, a feeling of reaching for something that keeps being just outside of our grasp. We make contact with it, and then it turns to smoke. It cannot be held. So our work involves a constant striving. Those that don't know this feeling are pretending to be close to art and live in secret fear of the aloneness of the deep creative process. Art requires audacity, and if you are not afraid, you are not taking any risks. You will simply skim the surface and offer the world nothing new. Ultimately, your songs will not matter. An artist's job is to reach communion with truth and bring that holy light into the world in order to soothe souls trapped in dark places. It is exceedingly difficult work, and most who attempt it fail. That said, there is no safety in success either. In fact, triumph brings a greater danger because the intense light of success is a wick that draws in darkness. Stars burn up. Stars flame out. Stars overdose, suicide. Some become oldies acts that create no new magic but simply repeat what has already been done over and over again, not for beauty's sake, but for cash money. And they suffer this as a humiliation and become bitter. A deep grounding in solitude is necessary to remain vital and creative. Solitude courts the muse. So you should know this. You have chosen a lonely path. As you work, you will have to learn to embrace each failure as an unavoidable part of the process. There will be many false starts and errors. And even though it is terrifying, you must continue to err and do so on the bold side. Have the audacity to lose face. Don't worry about saving it. And embrace each glorious failure as a necessary part of your journey. The chief danger in songwriting and in life is taking too many precautions. There is a very real relationship between what you contribute and what you get out of this life, but satisfaction lies in the effort, not in the attainment. The point of the work is the work. Being vulnerable in your work will bring you strength. And here is a final warning. If you do succeed and people come to know your name and your songs, the creative process gets harder, not easier. Fame and success attract parasites, clingers-on, wannabes. These non-creators will do everything in their power to attach to the light around you, thinking it will bring them out of their own darkness. It will not, but they don't know this. If you let them in, their hungry mouths will suck the light from you, and when you are emptied, they will simply move on and attach to someone else's glow. You must rid your life of these people or suffer their debilitating and soul-crushing manipulations. Fame and success can also bring laziness and ego swelling. With success can come the confusion of believing you are doing great work, backed up by the reassurance of people on your payroll, when you are not. It is easy to become delusional and get lost. Fame is a full-time job. So is songwriting. A choice is often required. Choose wisely. So then again, the point of all this work is simply the work. Struggle is the path, and there is no destination. There is only the path. We do not get there. There is no there. There is only here, now, on the path, in the struggle. We all must face the daunting blank page in front of each of us each morning. In this, we are all alike. I wish courage and perseverance for you as you embark on this life's work of writing songs. You will need it.
That is truly, that is a remarkable, for lack of a better term, manifesto about songwriting. And I heard the recognition going on here at various points. I want to ask you about a couple of the lines here. A half truth is a whole lie. Character, like integrity, is much easier kept than recovered.
I know this because I've lied and I've lost my integrity. I know that getting it back is incredibly difficult, and I know that you know, when you record a song with a half-truth in it, you can't take it, it's a recording. It's a record, it's a permanent record. You gotta live with that. You know, I know that. So that's where that wisdom comes from. My friend Mike Farris said, well, once you released that letter, Mary, the sign-up table for singer-songwriters, the line got shorter.
There's and my other favorite here is either we tell our story or our story tells us.
I don't know if that's true for everybody. I know that's true for people who have suffered trauma. I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
I believe that to be true. That the weight of it will slowly bend you over.
Mm-hmm.
And to tell it will stand you up. That the telling of it, healing involves the telling of it, and telling of it in a group, so that other people can offer compassion, and you have to have the courage to receive it. And that's, you know, a hard thing to let the love in, you know. And so that's where that comes from.
Has that been hard for you over time, to let the love from the audience in?
Yeah. It's hard to know what it means. It's hard to know what it means. It's a complicated thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for the longest time, I thought people loved the songs because it spoke to their humanity.
Sure.
And that they didn't know me, so that their love for me was kind of odd.
Yeah.
But I knew they loved the songs. But I'm starting to be able to open more to it, you know, and to open my eyes when I sing. For the longest time, I closed my eyes. I didn't know where to put my eyes. That was the hardest part of the whole thing. Where do you put your eyes?
Where am I looking?
Well, I know when I'm sitting in the audience and one of my favorite songwriters in front of me is singing, if they look into my eyes when I'm in the audience, I feel like I've been struck by electricity.
Yeah.
Like it's like,
Yeah.
zzz, you know, and so I'm scared of that power still in a lot of ways. And so I've had to learn where to put my eyes, you know, because it is a powerful place to be, you know. There's a lot of energy flying around.
Yeah.
But I think on a general level, I'm getting way better at letting the love in.
Yeah.
You know,
Good.
it's less scary as you get older for some reason.
I wanted to ask you, because we're kind of running out of time here. So tonight we inaugurate this series with the Americana Music Association, and I'm pleased to tell you that Mary is a member of the board of the Americana Music Association, and it could not be more appropriate that you are our first artist. But I wanted to ask you about what does Americana as a genre mean to you?
I think it's a more open genre that lets people in who don't fit into the mold at any record shop, that don't fit into country, don't necessarily fit into folk. There's roots and blues based sounds and passion, but it's not exactly that.
Yeah.
It's sort of a collection of people who don't fit in the bin, but who are grounded in American roots music.
And it's all terrific.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think it's a great genre to land in. The challenge, of course, becomes when do you say no?
There is a certain amount of curation that needs to.
And who does that, and how does that work?
That's the $64 million question.
That's the challenge of it.
Yeah, exactly. But it is a remarkably diverse, broad tent.
It's very
that
inclusive.
we bring people under.
Very inclusive.
Yeah. So as I said, we generally we ask for a question or two from the house. I think we've got time for about one. So who's got the best question in the house? Do we have a good shy? Everyone all of a sudden shy. I love this.
It's a manifesto scared
Yes,
everybody.
right there. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I really enjoyed your talk. I'm even more impressed by you than before. You talked about when you tell your story and then you get compassion from your audience. How do you avoid judgment? When you tell your story, people judge you. And
Oh, yeah, people judge you anyway. So you can be judged for what they don't know about you or what they do know about you. I think the best, for me, the best thing I can do is be open and honest. And so if you're going to judge me for the truth, what can I do about that? I don't want you to judge me for lies that aren't true, but I've learned to accept rejection and reject acceptance.
Anybody have another question? Yes, yes, sir, right here.
It is. If you Google CD Baby, Mary Gauthier, Letters to the Young Songwriter, they've posted it on their blog.
You can have my copy. It's okay.
Yeah, they posted it on their blog.
Yeah.
And it got retweeted by the guitar player for Guns N' Roses, who has somewhere around 100,000 Twitter followers. And then it went all...
Slash?
No, the other guitar player, not Slash, but the second guitar player. Yeah.
Oh, Gibby.
Yeah, and his followers have retweeted, and it's starting. It went ballistic on Twitter for a while, and it was kind of exciting. Like 1 million people have read this crazy thing that I wrote.
It's fantastic. Another question. Yes, sir.
Curious, you were talking about the new album and how you had to write more songs to keep the grief going. Did you find that when you finally laid the songs out, that chronologically the beginning of the album were the older songs, and as you moved further, the songs on the end of the album were more current?
No, isn't that interesting? That's the interesting thing about grief is you're all over the place. Yeah, no, I wrote some of the beginning of the record. I wrote it at the end of the grieving process, and some of the end of the record I wrote at the beginning of the. It's all over the place. What I didn't put on the record were songs that were just utterly sad and despairing, because that's actually not the truth. That was a phase I moved through, and so I didn't want to be that grim, because it didn't last. It didn't last. I studied Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the 5 stages of grief, and you go up and down that ladder when you're letting go of something that you've lost that's significant, and usually it's someone that you've lost that was significant to you. You go through denial, and then anger, and then there's the stage of just sadness and depression, and you go up and down and up and down and up and down until finally you get to acceptance. When that shock finally wears off and you start to accept it, and that can take years. And so the songs were all over the place. It didn't come in any kind of order. That would have been nice, though. Wouldn't have had to write 35 to get 8.
One more. Do we have one more?
Yeah, thanks, Walt. I'm drawn to people that have suffered trauma, because I've suffered trauma, and I've made it through. Although if some loud thing happens, I'll probably scream. I'll jump out of my chair. I still have the PTSD thing. But I'm interested in trying to help, and I think I can help, because I've worked through so much of it. And I think people who are in it can look into someone's eyes who's been through it and is further down the line with it and see that. And right there in and of itself, it's helpful. And for me, the weapon is always the guitar. The powerful weapon, the truth-telling weapon that is threatening to presidents and kings. This machine that kills fascists that Woody Guthrie so elegantly wrote on his Gibson guitar. The truth-telling weapon that I bring into my work with traumatized people is the guitar. And, you can't help but be grateful when you're on the other side of so many things that I've made it through, and want to give back in some way. And this is how I know to do it, And I enjoy the breakthroughs that happen in the work. When you see some of the sorrow lift, and you see some of the pain shared, pain shared is pain halved. And people see that other people have been through exactly what they're going through. They know that there's a chance they can get through it because other people have. Trauma tends to isolate us. It severs our ties with other people, and we go deeper and deeper into ourselves, and it becomes a a very dangerous, dangerous place. And so the goal is to get reconnected with other people in an authentic way. And it's, you know, it's an honor to be able to work with vets in this way. It's an absolute honor.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Here, here. Well,
All I can say is it's an honor to have you here tonight. We are so thrilled. I've enjoyed talking, but I think I can speak for the assembled throng that we'd like to hear you play. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mary Gauthier.